Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are crime dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Only Murders in the Building, Season 4, Episode 5. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So obviously, it's not entirely told from his point of view, but I guess with the voiceover, you can say it's kind of told from Marshall, the writer's point of view. And I love the title of the episode being Adaptation, because there's layers to that, because I never think about it, but it's like, well, obviously this movie is an adaptation of the podcast, but also it's about adapting to kind of be what you want to be, which obviously Marshall was doing that, putting on the glasses, the fake mustache and beard, because he's like, oh, this is who I have to be as a writer, and you're just waiting for your opportunity. And Bev finally hit him up with the call with this script, and it's like who you want to be versus like who you are, which is something that obviously our characters have struggled with. It is something that Mabel has constantly struggled with. It's something she's struggling with this episode too, where they're like, oh, she's like, what do I do with this money? Like, they're like, oh yeah, you're a podcaster or crime influencer, which I'm like, I'm sure there probably are like crime influencers, like true crime influencers. I'm sure there are. I don't watch a lot or listen to a lot of true crime stuff. I've watched true crime TV shows or something like that, like a scripted adaptation or something, but like I've never like a scripted like true story type of thing, but like I've never listened to like a true crime podcast. Not my thing. But yeah, they're like, yeah, you're a podcast, podcast producer. And she's like, ooh, trying to like put that titling on, and it's like interesting. You would think that probably come a little easier. Well, it's also interesting too, considering like you're taking that title, but you never want to listen to Howard when he's just talking about, we need to like, what's it, animal jobs, like. But it does make me wonder, is that going to be Maple's thing? Is she going to like build out like a podcasting network and be like a producer of all those things? Especially later on when you have Bev throwing out like, oh, give me some pitches, some ideas, and Mabel's just flying by the seat of her pants like, it's about people, tall people, short people, and another one's about buttons, when people press them, but it's really about trauma, and Bev is like, ooh, I like that. Which Bev wants her to immediately kind of take all these ideas and kind of flesh them out, which is like, well, Mabel's in the middle of a murder investigation, but so it's gonna be interesting to see where that ends up going. I just thought that was kind of an interesting through line and element, but kind of staying on Marshall and kind of staying with Mabel, I thought was kind of interesting. First and foremost, him getting so excited when they're like, ooh, I'm a suspect, and he's so happy about that because he admires this group. I mean, it makes sense. Like, you're one of those people who's like, I deep dive into a subject so that I can prepare for the script I'm writing or this adaptation I'm helping make. And so he ends up talking about the fact is he likes Mabel a lot because it's like, he's like, yo, you're an inspiration because you never let anyone else determine who you are. No matter what ends up happening, you're always true to yourself, which I think is why it kind of speaks to him, because he's trying to be someone else. She's very still true to herself. Obviously, Oliver is not too keen on how he's written in the script, but Charles is. He loves it. He loves how he's being portrayed in the script. So we know there were changes made to Oliver. I don't know if there were any. Mabel seems like Mabel's like, it's key to her character to not change. So I don't think Marshall, because Marshall likes her the way she is, so he probably didn't change anything. To our knowledge, we don't know if he changed anything for Charles, but he definitely changed for Oliver. But either way, taking quite a few steps back, because I'm sorry, that was kind of my brain. I just want to kind of continue that train of like, with the Marshall conversation, but backing up a little bit, picking up where the last episode left off, Bev pointing the gun at our group, which is interesting because she didn't recognize them, and then she turned on the light. She's like, oh my god, it's you guys. It's like, oh, worried this gun's not loaded, and then she proceeded to basically empty out the chamber with firing the shots off, which part of me, because she believes that someone on the production of the movie is the ones who killed Saz. So I guess she assumed like, oh, maybe it was one of the other people. Like maybe she thought it was Eugene Levy, Zach Galifianakis, and Eva Longoria that were there. I mean, it's like, obviously, I'd be like, who else would she think it is? But maybe that's also supposed to be indicative of something where it's like, maybe she just has terrible eyesight. Maybe that's supposed to be like a little small clue that like, that just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. I don't know. Who else would you mistake them for other than the three that are playing them in the movies? But even then, like, not unless you think they're potential suspects. But Bev doesn't really care about all that, because it turns out the reason why she got mixed up in all of this is because she got a voicemail from Saz, and she never got back to Saz because she's like, yo, obviously getting a movie made is very hard. A movie getting scrapped, sadly, is not as hard as it should be. It's pretty easy for a movie to get scrapped, sadly, and shelved for tax reasons and stuff like that. But nevertheless, I went off my little snippy diatribe there. But it's like, yeah, it takes a lot to get a movie made, and this means a lot to Bev for the, money wise and reputation wise. So she was reluctant. She was very slow to get back to Saz because it's like, I don't want to hear any bad news about this movie I'm working on. I want it all good. I want this to all go. But by the time she got back by the time she was kind of even considering to get back to Saz, she found out Saz was murdered. So she decided to look into it because it's like, well, we might have a murderer on our set. One thing was like, okay, there's some bad things going on our set that someone wants to talk to me about. Now I'm finding out someone on the set might be a murderer, so that changes things a little bit. Just a teeny tiny bit, so. But Bev's pretty much like the gun-ho type of like, oh, let's kind of see this through. She's excited to see the team doing their thing, seeing them, and she's like, oh my God, like murder investigation. She's like, oh my God, it's so exhausting, so. So it seems like Bev's not on the suspect list. I wondered, I thought there was something more to it. My theories last episode was like maybe she has some connection to Saz, but it seems like no, there's no connection. It's just like because Saz left her a voicemail because she was like at some award show for 100 women under 100 or something like that. So she was at that award thing. So we also find out that Howard might not be able to be in the movie, but he is on set now. So am I the only one that kind of gets Kevin James vibes? Like, because Kevin James had like those YouTube videos where he was like a gripper on like, no, he's the sound guy on movies and stuff like that. It kind of gave me that same energy. Like, I don't know if I just kept seeing that with Howard this episode, but maybe that was just like my imagination. But that was like immediately what came to my mind. We also have the situation with Detective Williams being brought in. They end up handing her the gun that Bev had because I don't think they said it was Saz's gun. Maybe they did. I don't remember. Because she found at that trampoline place that Saz was setting up to be like her school for stunt people. She found one of the things she found there was a gun. Other than him handing it over to Detective Williams, it'd probably be like another episode or two before we find out if there's anything more to that. But yeah, she's like ripping into Charles because she's like, you guys have literally got 3 murder boards, and it's like you guys are amateurs. And then she finds out that because Oliver found out that the person from the photo with Loretta is some guy named Junk is his like nickname, and then it's just like, ooh, Loretta's like go like every time Oliver like that conversation comes up, everyone's basically like, oh my God, that guy's gonna fuck your girlfriend. It's just like, oh yeah, it's kind of like junk is kind of like a noun and a verb, and it's like, oh, he's gonna junk his junk and he's gonna make your girl junk or something like that. It's like, oh yeah, it's a legitimate sentence and stuff like that. It's like, so all the concerns that maybe you thought that Oliver would take, make it, it's like, oh, it seemed like he's, after that last episode, deleting the Finsta and everything. But it's like, no, those insecurities like rile back up, and he's trying to be like, oh, I'm a young man, I'm this, I'm that. And it's like, no, you're not. He tries to pretend like, oh, I'm fit, I was this and that. And later on, when they're recreating what they believe to be the timetable for Saz's murder, which I love that whole sequence when Charles is like enacting it and they're doing a reenactment of it. I love that sequence, especially him walking down. People be like, oh my God, is that Brazos? And he's just like, yeah, you wish, Charles. And he's just, because he's saying like, right, you have this amount of time. Also like the way he's distracting Lester. Lester's like, how is that this type of bird? What's that doing in my lobby? I'm like, I love that that's supposed to be like the distraction. But also, you're talking about the person like, oh, they found all these great cleaning supplies, which I love that section of the reenactment because I'm like, it's because they're nondescript cleaning stuff, but there was like a stain removal behind it. But it's like, I felt like that was something straight out of a commercial. That felt like a in reenactment like planted like ad section of, I don't know, it just felt like an ad in that moment, because Marshall kept being like, yeah, like, well, the whole list of suspects is kind of, well, it's like the who, you don't really even know who the target is. Well, now you're thinking it's Saz because of all this, but for past couple episodes, they kept going back and forth of, well, was Saz murdered because Charles was the actual target? Or now it's like, well, now we're leaning into the, no, it was Saz because she knew something, which we know she was going to try and talk to Charles about something too. So I'm sure it's related to what she was trying to tell Bev. Not unless it ends up being something completely separate. I don't know. But it's like, well, we're still unclear on the who and the like who was the actual target, whole bunch of suspects and stuff like that. And also the timetable isn't quite, it's a very tight 12-minute timeline of like, okay, like the voicemail was left at like 11:07, and then like Saz was in the incinerator at 11:19. That's a lot for one person to do in that amount of time. So it's like the person would have to be superhuman to get it done. And Oliver tried to run it, and it was abysmal. It took him 38 minutes, and he's like, oh, I kind of went through a lot. And it's like, I'm not the athletic person I thought I was. Trying to reclaim his youth because he's trying to, once again, his insecurities are rising to the surface because of this whole Loretta situation. Once again, it does not help when people are around you constantly being like, oh my God, like, what was it that Bev told him? It was like, oh yeah, tell Loretta to kind of see like an orthopedic person first and foremost, because when he lays it down, it's going to mess her up. And it's just like, that's so effed up that everyone's saying like, oh, once again, oh, your girlfriend's going to, this guy's going to fuck your girlfriend. You know, even Zach Galifianakis is like, oh yeah, we did like a gender bent Snow White, and he slept with all the dwarves. And he did like try to run it back, like, oh, maybe, I mean, who's to say he slept with all the dwarves? He might have slept with, 5 of the 7. So I appreciate Zach at least attempting to make him feel better the moment he found out, oh, this is about your girlfriend. Okay, well, because he did not care for Oliver because they did not have the best first impression, but he has come to appreciate and like Oliver, because he's found so much depth in Oliver's character a couple episodes back. So I also love that Glenn is, because we got introduced to not only like, obviously it's not just that Eugene and Ava and Zach playing our crew, but also we met the stunt people, which includes Glenn. I think he's Oliver's stunt person. I even love the whole like, oh, do back to back, and then it's like, oh, you're penis to penis, and Zach and Oliver almost like, what? And then like Oliver and Glenn do the whole penis to penis thing. I was like, this is awkward as hell. And hey, but Glenn's all for it, like, oh, let me show you how it's done. So that's interesting. Cause I saw Paul Rudd's name in the credits. I was like, oh man, so that wasn't just a one-off character. So I guess we're gonna see him periodically throughout this season. So that's pretty dope. I also love Charles' attempt to like take photos of people, even though you can hear the snap of like the camera on his phone snapping. That I'm like, people are clearly hearing that, and I thought Mabel would have said something, but she never did. So I was like, well, but him trying to be so indiscreet about it, and she's like, you do have your camera the right way. And he fixes it like halfway through, being like, okay. I was like, okay, so the rest of that's just pictures of the side of your face. I was like, okay. The clue, actually, the big clue in this episode was Mabel realizing, taking some of like the photos that Charles did of like, there was like that what was it, that dust collect, like stuff that like how we were saying, like, right, you put it down, it's meant to collect dust or dirt so it's not all over like the set, and one of the footprints on it matches the footprint from Dudanov's room, the one from the window where the shot was fired. So all they have to do is go back and inspect everyone's shoes. I thought they were going to have to like legitimately do that, but it's like, no, just put that stuff down everywhere. In fact, apparently Eva Longoria is really big into adhesive. She's kind of got her hands in all of that. So I love that it's like, oh, she had to put on a little bit of a crazy performance, and Maple was like, oh, thank you for that. She's like, no, it's no problem. She's like, I kind of did a similar thing in Desperate Housewives for the 8th season. I told them, if they want me back, they're going to have to legalize gay marriage. And they did. So, you're welcome, gays. And just kind of walks away. And it's like, once again, Eva Longoria is unhinged. So, I love it. I should also know I do like the context, or like the vision behind or at least that mirrored vision about the for the photo shoot. Like, oh, the three sets of like, oh, and just like reflect. Like, I think that's actually kind of a really cool concept of like, okay, here's the actual people, here's the actors playing them, and there's also the stunt people. There's like three layers of that. I'm like, conceptually, I'm like, I really like that. I think it'd actually make a pretty dope like picture. I doubt it wouldn't be a poster or anything, but it'd be like a picture in like a magazine most likely, or an article, and I think would like be a really like I said, I really like the concept. Especially because of like the deeper layers of how it's like, oh, here's how you see yourself versus how you're being perceived by other people, which in turn is affecting how you view yourself, which once again every character, Charles, Oliver, and Mabel are all going through that in their respective ways of like wanting to kind of change how they're perceived from themselves as well as how other people receive them, but also being like, oh, how this person recognizes me, like once again how Oliver's like, that person in the script, that's not me. Like, I don't, what was it? It was just like in particular like how Oliver walks around the room, which I love. He immediately tries to adapt how, like, change how he walks and stuff like that, just to kind of prove a point. I also love the inspiration for Charles figuring things out. Once again, he's like that brain thumping again, and that was like him and Eugene going past each other and touching hands. He's like, "What are we doing? Dancing?" And in that moment, it's like, right, it takes two to tango. Not that wasn't said, but that's what kind of spun off from it was the whole, oh, well, our timetable works if it was two people. So, and they're looking at the shoes, and we see that it's from the brother's sisters. The sister brothers is their actual name. Sorry, because they're sisters, but their last names are brothers. I keep flip flopping that in my head. Whatever the case may be, it seems like they are our number one suspects right now. The question then becomes, why did they kill Saz? Well, what was it that Saz discovered? Obviously, it's like we're only at the halfway point in the season. There's no way it's actually them. It's going to be another red herring. But I am curious to find out why were their boot. Why would the? I mean, once again, it could just be a thing of, well, you also have to consider like there might have been someone else on the set that had those boots on that day or something. Like, that's not. I mean, it's enough to kind of make you suspicious of them, but it's not like a smoking gun. So, but then also there's a, excuse me, whole situation where like one of the sisters disappears, and you're like, wait, what? And then all of a sudden, there was a shot fired, and I'm sure that, in a kind of tasteless way, was meant for shock value. Maybe something did happen, but I think it more than anything, I think I was about to say the effed up thing would be if Glenn got shot and killed, because it's like, oh man, like Ben survived one attempted murder, then died by another unintentional but intentional murdering, and then like his stunt person gets killed on his job that he kind of begged to, so I was like, that'd be effed up if that's the way that goes. It just kind of like, for comedic purpose, like, I could see that happening, but I get the feeling like it might have been something they set up just to set the mood of like to capture something. Like it could be a moment. We'll see. Maybe it is a legitimate like, oh, shots fired, but it feels like that was all set up for like some like, oh, you're trying to capture this particular emotion or something in that moment. I'm excited to ultimately see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. To the next Help Me Meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.